that for a second. I'm sorry.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kabbalah Café. What a great way to get the week started. This is going to be our post-Simchat Torah Kabbalah kickoff class, and we have a lot to talk about. So today's theme is how to cure spiritual apathy. Is that what we said? How to train your inner dragon. What was it? How to cure spiritual apathy. And so I wrote about it in the email. And by the way, the last few weeks, the emails have been coming out Saturday night only for one reason. Because the 3-day holiday, it's like I have to write them on Wednesday now. Who's writing Sunday for Wednesday? Who has that?
Right before Shabbos.
Well, so it's before Shabbos. Nonetheless, it hit the inbox before Shabbos. But anyway, so if you had a chance to read it last night, I know it came in, I don't know, around 9 o'clock, I guess, came in fairly late, relatively late, I guess. But the point is, the email wrote I think something that we've all experienced, which is sometimes we want to feel, sometimes we think we should feel, or we want to feel, but we don't feel. We just don't feel. In Kabbalah, we call that timtum halev. Timtum halev, not Tintin. That was the Snowy. Remember Tintin and Snowy? No one remembers this?
Perfect. When I got the email,
yeah,
made me think of Rabbi New when he got up before Yiska to do the prayer for the hostages, and he got very emotional.
Right.
He was crying.
Right.
And I was standing there, and I didn't feel it.
You didn't feel it.
And then I got the email.
Right. And hey, man, and it's like, you should feel it. You should feel it, or you want to feel, but you don't feel. So it's called timtum halev. Timtum halev means when the heart is, Oded, I turn to you. Timtum, does anyone use that? Really? All right, now we all want to hear. What does it mean? Like stuffed up, like clogged? Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that's somewhat derogatory, I guess. All right. Right. But but at least in the original context, the idea is interesting. I definitely asked. So
secular.
Right. So the timtum halev means where the heart is, I think the literal understanding of it in the context is where it feels blocked or stuffed up, almost like clogged, almost like a clogged artery where, blood, I guess, right? Blood through an artery. Blood is not going through. Right. Your heart is hardened. A little Pharaoh-esque, right? The heart, but it's more like it's clogged. It's not allowing the emotions to flow through. So it could be a situation where the appropriate thing is to feel, and you should feel, and you want to feel, and you feel like you should feel, but you can't feel. And it's a little bit clogged. So I want to share with you, we're going to study today a little bit of chapter 29 of Tanya. So we have our text, we have another text, Tanya. Tanya is like the Bible of Chabad Hasidism. And in chapter 29 of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, the author of Tanya, and the first Chabad Rebbe, deals with the issue of timtum halev. But I just want to drop it in context before we jump into this. The context is as follows. The book of Tanya talks about the persona of the Beinoni. Who is the Beinoni? The Beinoni is, in Talmudic lingo, jargon, parlance, you have 3 categories: tzaddikim, risha'im, and beinanim. Tzaddikim are righteous, risha'im are wicked, and beinanim in the middle. And so you would think, and this is kind of how the journey of Tanya begins, you would think that a tzaddik is someone that has more good than bad, and a rasha has more bad than good, and a beinoni right down the middle. But already from the first chapter of Tanya, he establishes the problem with his premise, because there was a great rabbi in the Talmud, Rabbah, who said, if you want to know who a Beinoni is, I'm a Beinoni. And there's no way that he thought that he was half and half. There's no way that Rabbah thought he had done half of his life, half of his actions were sinful and half were meritorious. There's no way that he could have swung and missed on that one. So the way Tanya develops the understanding of a Beinoni is on a completely different level. It's not about mechza zechuyot and mechza avonot. It's not about half mitzvot and half sins. It's a completely different metric. It's that a person is pulled in two different directions as opposed to a tzaddik. So let me explain. And these are things that we've discussed before, but again, I just want to drop this in a quick context. A tzaddik, at least the Tanya's definition of a tzaddik, is not just someone who does more good than not. It's someone who does good and who only wants to do good. In other words, the goodness is so intrinsic to their nature. A tzaddik is someone who only wants to do good and who only does good. Is not even tempted in the negative. Inside and out, not just outside. Perfect. On the inside also. That's the chiddush. The novelty of this is that even on the inside, there's no negative temptation. Now, how many you think there's who could be such a person? Someone who's never even tempted to say anything, to do anything. Who is like that? That's why the Talmud says, indeed, that Hashem saw that the tzaddikim would be very few, so he staggered them across the generations. And now the Rebbe proves from that there are many people that do more good than bad. Many people. So when the Talmud says that Hashem saw that there would be very few tzaddikim, so he staggered them throughout the generations, it must be this deeper understanding of a tzaddik, which is not yet. I called which is not just a tzaddik, not just someone who, if you would judge them, they would come up as, they're better than they're worse. But someone who pure inside and out is someone who is a tzaddik, not just behaviorally, but also psychologically and emotionally pure inside. A rasha is someone who has negative desires inside and expresses them on the outside. So again, a tzaddik, the two opposites. A tzaddik is pure inside, pure outside. A rasha is, let's just say, complicated. Complicated inside and complicated outside. What's the Beinoni? Psychological rasha, behavioral tzaddik. On the inside, the Beinoni is pulled in different directions, just like a rasha. Just like the rasha who is driven, who is being pulled into negativity, all sorts of mishagasin, right? All sorts of shenanigans, right? The Beinoni is also pulled internally into those directions. But unlike the rasha who succumbs to that and expresses that, the Beinoni has a firewall or whatever it is, a way to block that. Sorry?
Governor.
Yeah. The Beinoni blocks that, the inside stuff, from manifesting outside. That is the definition of the Beinoni. And so really the Tanya, the original name of Tanya is Sefer Shal Beinonim, the book of the Beinoni. It's a guide to how to be good when you don't feel so good inside. Which, by the way, is probably one of the most practical spiritual guides ever penned, which is why the Tanya is a classic text. Because it's not speaking to the tzaddik, because they probably don't need a book. If you're a tzaddik, you probably don't need a book. You're probably good to go. It's the Beinoni, or the aspiring Beinoni, right? Right now I wait tables, but one day I'm aspiring Beinoni. Joke. Actor, LA. Help me out here, guys. All right. I'm going to try different material. We're not going to do LA material in Atlanta, see?
If
Hey.
it's funny, we'll laugh.
All right. Okay. Good. In other words, you'll let me know when it's funny. Okay. So back to the point. So the idea here is that Tanya is written for either the Beinoni or the aspiring Beinoni, someone who struggles, someone who has all sorts of negative thoughts, negative feelings, negative desires inside. And the best, or the goal is to hold that back and to show up in a way that is positive, holy, right? A way that is menschy, right? I like a mensch. Despite what's going on inside. If you're feeling great inside, you're feeling like spiritual and aligned inside, and you're doing that on the outside, great. In this moment, you're a tzaddik. If you're feeling lousy on the inside and you're acting in a lousy way, great. That's a rasha moment. But if you feel lousy on the inside, but you can still smile, right? And not, and say or do the right thing, that, my friends, is a Beinoni moment. Because none of us, well, I can't say none of us, But we don't necessarily, we are not necessarily exclusively a tzaddik, a Rosh, or a Beinoni. We have different moments. There are some areas in which you would never be tempted for that thing, and you never do it. Or some things in the positive that you, a mitzvah that you love doing, and you do it. In that area, in that little realm, in that realm, you're a tzaddik. You were never tempted. You never had a challenge in that area. You're crushing it. You're a tzaddik maslo. There are some areas in which we struggle, both on the inside and in performance as well. We struggle. In those areas, we're along the lines of a Rasha. And there are other areas, the third category, the Beinoni, is where you feel tempted, you feel pulled in a negative direction, you feel whatever it is, you feel that inner struggle, but on the outside you show up in the way of a mensch, in a proper and correct way. That is a Beinoni area of life. So these are the three personas. And it takes many chapters in Tanya to develop this. You see, we knocked it out in what? Maybe 5-10 minutes? Look at that. What a deal. What a bargain. Now,
That's because we're tzaddikim.
oh, see that? We already knew this stuff. We already knew it inside. By the way, once you hear this, it's like, it sounds very intuitive.
Well, I'm not speaking pro yet. Thank God.
Well, you may have just slipped now into different. Anyway, what's the point? The point of all this is that this is the setup of Tanya. And then in the middle chapters, there's 53 chapters in the book. In the middle chapters, in the 20s, in the mid to late 20s of the chapters of Tanya, he talks about, well, what happens when you're trying to live your best Beinoni life, right? Living the Beinoni life, hashtag, create a vlog channel for this. As I travel around the country, living the Beinoni life. So what happens when you're trying to live the Beinoni life, but then stuff, life, whatever, challenges get in the way? What happens if you're feeling, what happens if, like on a very practical level, what happens if life throws lemons at you? What happens when stuff goes wrong?
This time of year it says Rogan.
So, right. A lot of extra estrogen hanging around. Right, exactly. But seriously, on a serious level, what happens when you're trying to be a Beinoni, which means you're trying to be in control of yourself, and even when you have negative thoughts or negative feelings, you're trying to suppress them and do the right thing and show up as you need to for your family, friends, loved ones, community, whatever. You're trying for God, you're trying to show up and be a good person. But then car breaks, or even worse, I don't even, whatever, I'm not judging, but or somebody does something that's hurtful to you. So now what? It's you were trying to be good, and now you're getting, you just got slapped, right? So, well, that's the easy. I mean, conceptually, right, easier said than done. So he deals with that in the mid-20s. It's really beautiful. He deals with depression. He deals with feelings of guilt, shame, anxiety. This is, when you read Tanya, you realize he wrote this before Freud. Right, he wrote this in the 1700s, and it's such deep, just even psychology. It's so profound. Anyway, but one of the issues he deals with is this idea of timtum halev, when you want to feel but you can't feel. When you want to have an emotional, you want to be there emotionally, whether it's for God or someone else, you want to be there emotionally, but for whatever reason you feel a little stuck. So he actually deals with this on a spiritual level. Let's read it. So I just gave you the setup. So again, we have the idea of the concept of a Beinoni, and then we have being a Beinoni is hard enough when you're dealing with your inherent negative drives, let alone when life throws at you difficult challenges. And so that is what we are dealing with right now, the challenge of timtum halev, this blockage of the heart. All right. You know what? Even said they can need refreshers. All right, so what I did here was I didn't do a lot of, due to the time constraint in turning this around, I usually do copy and paste and format it, at least the way that I like it. But you know what? This is actually this printed straight off of Chabad.org, but it's kind of cool. Oh, do I have it here? One sec. Yeah, listen, always cop out.
By the way, in the car business, we had a rule.
Yeah.
Of what we call the 80%.
Okay.
10% of the customers were extreme to the right, and 10% were extreme to the left. And in the car business, you concern yourself with the 80%, the Beinonis.
That's
Interesting.
the bell curve theory.
What's that?
That's the bell curve theory.
Interesting.
That is the technical
Interesting.
term for it.
See that?
But we're in the car business,
But-
you weren't smart
but-
enough to know the term.
But I'm telling you. Well, I'll tell you this. Yeah. But what I find fascinating about this is that a lot of these ideas, the first time you find them in print is in Tanya, obviously in Hebrew and in a spiritual context. But it's amazing how, not just ahead of its time, but if you want to think about it spiritually, how literally groundbreaking this wisdom is, where then once it's brought into the world, it then can filter into other areas. Anyway, but that's another conversation. Chapter 29.
Look at the Hasidic movement, hadn't made it.
That's right. Yeah. Chapter 29 of Tanya. Here we go. All right, let's do this. I guess this is cool because we have the Hebrew on one side and English on the other. I'll read the English. We'll just make it easy.
And we'll read the Hebrew.
Okay, here we go. So chapter 29. I'm not going to read all the paragraphs in the middle because those are commentary and I'm giving my own. Those whose souls are of the level of Beinonim must seek means of contending with yet another difficulty. Because he's been talking about challenges to being a Beinoni. One challenge is, like I said, when you are, when you get, surprised by some sort of thing that goes wrong in your life, or what happens when you feel bouts of sadness or guilt or shame about the past, maybe, whatever. But here's another one. Here's another difficulty. Occasionally, and he says even frequently, they, meaning the Beinonim, the every person, right? The every man and woman, they experience a dullness of the heart. Interesting. So here the translation of timtum, and you see it in the Hebrew, timtum halev is translated here as dullness of the heart. Okay, interesting. As though it had turned to stone. Oh, as you mentioned, and try as they might, they cannot open their heart in prayer, which is by definition the service of the heart. Now, I see there's a paragraph here. I'm not sure what it says because I actually didn't read it in advance of the class, but I will say this. I will say that when it comes to tefillah, prayer is the hardest thing in the hardest practice in Judaism. It's relatively easy to light a menorah, to eat matzah, to hear the shofar. When I say relatively easy, you just kind of have to show up and it's there. When it comes, yeah, that's true. Right. It's like the box or the matzah, which is different. Blind taste test. No, but so that there's always a challenge in getting yourself there to do a mitzvah. Once it's there, it's relatively straightforward. When it comes to prayer, when it comes to davening, we know that davening is meant to be more than just reading a bunch of words. It's meant to be, we're meant to have an experience when we daven, when we pray. But it's hard. And that's what he's talking about. It's hard. What happens if you're in synagogue, you're in shul, and you have the siddur, you have the prayer book open, and you know it's meant to be an experience that is emotive or emotional. It's supposed to be an experience that captures your heart, that your heart is involved in. You're just not feeling it. You're just not you're disconnected. So what do you do? That's literally what the Kiddush Club is for. But the question is, what do you do? So let's continue. Yeah, it's they meet in the hallway and also. Also, listen, that opens the heart sometimes, yeah. Climbing the ladder. Yeah, you're supposed to. But what happens if you're trying and you're just not feeling it? You're trying and you're like, let me think about this. I'm trying to meditate on something. It's not just working. And
perspective, from a Hasidic perspective, that's okay.
Let's see what the Alter Rebbe says. Let's see. Hold on. Hold your thoughts. Also, let's continue. So not only is the heaviness of the heart or the dullness of the heart or the apathy of the heart, not only is it taking away from his quality of prayer, he says also, this is now on the second page, right? Second side. Also, the heaviness in his heart prevents him at times from waging war against the evil impulse in sanctifying himself in permitted matters. In other words, what's happening is that because the person is feeling a little spiritually sluggish or emotionally spiritually sluggish, so they're not optimized in their in the spiritual space, and they're not finding themselves able to wage war. I'm going to explain the line: waging war against the evil impulse in sanctifying himself in permitted matters, which means there's a concept. It's actually in Torah and the commentaries, but it's brought out a lot in Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy, the idea that a person should sanctify themselves even in the areas of the permissible. We're not talking about refraining from doing bad things. This is even in the area of things that are okay, even in areas that are kosher. It's about not indulging in that either, with the idea that the indulgence is a material indulgence and it's feeding the animal soul. And the more we feed the animal soul, the more we give free rein to the animal soul, then ultimately it's going to end up in also a negative place. In other words, there's only so long that the animal soul will be content in staying in a, let's say, a kosher lane, a kosher space. The more we indulge the animal, it's just at some point it's going to become very strong and take us into a negative space. So what do you do? What do we do when we feel ourselves? We feel sluggish. We're feeling that I don't have sluggish right word. We're feeling like our heart is stuck. We're not feeling it. So take a look. This is the advice from the Zohar. Zohar is the primary work of Kabbalah. It's really, really powerful. In this case, the advice, and just so you know, if you're using the booklets, which everyone here is, so it's on page 2 of 14, and we're right in the middle of the page. In this case, the advice given in the Holy Zohar is, as the president of the Academy of Gan Eden said. Yes, there is a president of the Academy of Gan Eden, just like there would be a Rosh Yeshiva, head of the yeshiva in a terrestrial academy, in the heavenly academy, in the Beit Medrash Shalamayla, there is also a head of the academy. And so this person said, this president of the Academy of Gan Eden said the following. It says like this: a wooden beam. I want to read it. I'm going to read it in the Aramaic first. Ayad lasalip nahar mevachnale. Kufa de lasalip nahara de nishmasa mevachnale. A wooden beam which does not catch fire needs to be splintered. And similarly, a body in which the light of the soul does not penetrate should also be splintered and broken open. And thereby the body becomes receptive to the soul's light, as the Zohar concludes. Let me explain, and this is something that we all know. You're making a bonfire, you're going camping, or you're at a campsite and you're making a fire. Anyone who's ever made a fire knows a simple truth when it comes to making a fire. You have to start with small pieces of wood, small kindling, as they say. Apostrophe, kindling. If you start with a log, you have your Bic lighter, and you hold it to a log, unless that log is doused in what we call performance-enhancing, right, drugs or substances, right? Unless it's doused in substances, then it's not going to work. It's not going to light. It's not happening. You need to splinter. You need to break open the log and get it into smaller pieces, and then it can catch on fire. And the Zohar, which dates back 2,000 years, says that, quoting I don't know if this is a soul or an angel, I don't know who the president of the Academy of Gan Eden is, but whatever that spiritual energy is, said, it was not, but that said that the same is true with a body, with a person. If we find that our soul, our neshama, the godly soul inside, is like a fire. Ner Hashem nishmat Adam. The flame or the candle, the flame of God is the soul of man. Now, our soul is a flame. But sometimes we find that we're not excited, we're not enthusiastic, we're not on fire spiritually. So what do? You do the same thing that you do at the campsite. You got to break yourself open a little bit. You got to open yourself up. Well, hold on. What does that look like? Well, you bring an axe, and sometimes you got to do some klep. You got to hit it hard to yourself. Let's understand this. Let's continue. Let's keep on reading inside. Bottom of page 2, and we're about to transition to page 3. The reference to the light of the soul, which in this case does not penetrate the body, means that the light of the soul and of the intellect does not illuminate to such an extent as to prevail over the courses of the body. There is a fire. The soul is on fire. But the body, like a physical log, is too thick. It's not catching. It's not getting on. Thus, he's describing the problem of spiritual apathy. Thus, although he understands and meditates in his mind on the greatness of God, Yet that which he understands is not apprehended and implanted in his mind to the point where it enables him to prevail over the coarseness of the heart, because of the degree of the mind and heart's coarseness and crassness. In other words, the person is spending time thinking about God, meditating about God, studying the right things, but it's not catching. It's no fire. Doesn't feel spiritually alive. It's not inflamed in a good way, right? The energy is not there. Yeah. The mind is thinking one thing, the heart's feeling another thing. That also might be part of this. The mind is trying to think about good and holy and spiritual things and purposeful things, but the heart is feeling like, I don't know, who's playing at 1 o'clock, right? Like who's got the 1 o'clock in? Yeah, interesting. Saying where the heart is feeling excited about Yiddishkeit or whatever it is, but the mind is distracted. You know what? I don't know if that's the same thing. He's talking about here, timtum halev, where the heart is stuck. That might be something else. Timtum hamoch. That might be an even more challenging situation, but he's dealing with now that where the heart seems clogged. By the way, I will say this. There are other places in Kabbalah where it likens the disconnect between mind and heart, or it kind of contextualizes it as the challenge of the neck, right? Because you have the head, and then you have the torso, but then you have the neck, which is narrower.
Most vulnerable part of the body.
Correct. And you have there the kana, the vesha, and the vriden. You have the windpipe, you have the esophagus, the trachea, and the
windpipe is the
trachea.
It's trachea,
esophagus, and the vriden. That's it. And the jugular. Right? You have the kana, the vesha, and the vriden. So you have like air, food, right, and blood. So you have those three pipes corresponding to the Gimel Sarei Paro, the three officers of Pharaoh, the butler and the baker, the candlestick maker. I'm kidding. The butler, the baker, and the butcher, the ones that are told about in the story. Because Mitzrayim, Egypt, in Hebrew is Meitzar, is narrow spaces, like the neck is a narrow space. And so even when we're thinking about in our heads the right thing, sometimes doesn't penetrate the heart, it gets stuck. But here I think we're talking about even if it hits the heart, the heart is blocking it. The heart is too coarse and too crass. Let's continue. He explains the cause of this deficiency. Page 3, second paragraph. The cause of this deficiency is the arrogance of the klipa, of the animal soul, which exalts itself above the holiness of the light of the divine soul so that it obscures and darkens its light. It's all about, he says, the arrogance of the klipa, of the animal soul. The animal soul is too proud, is too smug, is too happy, is too okay, is too content. And the contentedness of the animal soul is actually blocking the light. It's almost like a person who is who everything is going well, let's say, which is a good thing, in their life, but because of that, they feel like they don't need anyone else, and so they're not investing in relationships because, well, what do I need you for? Everything's fine with my life. And then they're not vulnerable. They're not emotionally vulnerable to others. And then what inevitably happens is, well, then you do need someone, because at some point the wheel of fortune changes. And when the wheel of fortune turns, then no one's around. Now, I'm not suggesting that we only have friends for emergency use, in case of emergency, break this box. I'm not suggesting that, but I am suggesting that part of the challenge of emotional vulnerability, one of the reasons why we sometimes don't have vulnerability is because everything's good. And I think that's kind of what he's saying. It's the arrogance of the clip of the animal soul. That's it. Arrogance means when you think like, I'm good. I don't need to be open. I'm good. Let's continue. Therefore, he says, what's the solution? Just like wood, you got to break it open. You got to crush it. Now, we have to understand the word sometimes, and especially the translation, it may sound a little bit extreme. Don't worry. It's not being extreme. It's the concept. Therefore, one must crush it and cast it down to the ground. Just as in the previously quoted analogy, the beam is splintered so that it will catch fire. It's basically about opening yourself up. Now, how does this work though? It's easy to say things like, oh, just open yourself up and become more emotionally vulnerable. Well, what does that actually mean in this context, or and specifically in the spiritual context of our relationship with God? What does that mean to just open yourself up or to crush it or to splinter it? What does that actually mean? So he gives now actual advice, which means that a person should be introspective and become aware of the fact that their animalistic desires and drives are actually distasteful, not so kosher all the time. And so that's the idea here. Let's continue. This means that one must crush the sitra achra. Sitra achra means the other side, the side opposite of holiness, and cast it to the ground by setting aside appointed times for humbling oneself and considering himself. Well, hold on. All right, this sounds very harsh, but considering himself despicable and contemptible as it is written. Now, let me explain this for a second. It doesn't mean you actually think I'm a horrible person, but it means that at times, and notice that he says at appointed times, set aside appointed times. It doesn't mean to like beat yourself up when you start like a moment of negative, a depressing thought comes in. Now you're beating yourself further. That's not what he's saying. He's saying you proactively set times to think about yourself and your life and think about the things that have not gone so well, things that you've done wrong, etc., and start recognizing the frailty of the human condition, specifically your human condition. And in that way, we open ourselves up. We go from a place of smugness, everything's okay, I'm great, I'm fine, I'm perfect, to I'm not so perfect. I'm not so perfect. I'm flawed, right? I have flaws. And that self-awareness, he's basically advocating for honest self-awareness and really opening oneself up on the inside. And look what he says here. Again, page 3, right in the middle in the handout. Now, a broken heart leads to a broken spirit. The spirit in this case, not the good spirit is broken. No, the spirit being the negative spirit, the sitra achra, which in the case of Beinanim is the very man himself. Because oftentimes the Beinani identifies with the animal soul as opposed to the godly soul. Right? A tzaddik always identifies with their godly soul. A Beinani, oftentimes, certainly in Russia, identifies with the animal soul as being who they are. Who am I? I'm a body with a godly soul, as opposed to a godly soul in a body. That's oftentimes how a Beinani views him or herself. And so what he's saying here is that a broken heart, a lev nishbar, a broken heart leads to a ruach nishbara, to a broken spirit. In this case, the broken spirit of negativity, which is a win in this case. It's opening up the wood. It's breaking that log into smaller pieces. For in his heart, let's continue. For in his heart, the vital soul, that's the same as the animal soul, which animates the body, is in its full strength as it was at birth. Hence, it is indeed the very man himself. From the moment that we're born, we have a very strong sense of our animal soul, or nefesh achayunit, same thing, the vitalizing soul or animating soul. It's all the same thing. It's not the godly soul. It's the soul, that the biological soul that keeps us alive. From birth, we feel that very strong, which is why a child, when it's hungry, or tired or whatever it is, a child will cry. It's a natural biological. I feel what I need. The child, the baby does not, and you've heard me say this 1,000 times, a baby, a child, young child does not have the sense of feeling what the other person needs. The baby is not empathetic to the mother. That's not in any way a criticism. That's just a reality. The baby is completely attuned to what he or she needs, to their own needs. And that's because they have a very strong nefesh achayunit, their own soul, their own animal soul or vitalizing soul. He doesn't call it animal soul here, although it's the same thing. But the vitalizing soul is very strong and aware within them, within the child, as opposed to the divine soul or the lofty soul or the giving soul, which is about being aware of purpose and meaning and what I need to give to others and to God and to the world. That is not yet so strong. And so the point of this is that it's about breaking the stronghold of that soul that so often suffocates our spiritual sensitivity. Let's continue. Ideally at it's supposed to be it's a progressive process. Bar mitzvah is a major stage in that. I mean, not like that necessarily happens not like you're flipping a switch. But at that point, I think usually around that age, children could be, or young adults could be a little bit more aware of, not just what they want, but what they're needed for. You can have those deeper, yeah, more aware of, purpose. That's why a lot of people for their bar bat mitzvah, they do a mitzvah project. It's really a nice thing. It's like a declaration of, I'm not living my life for myself, right? I'm not using my bar mitzvah money or bat mitzvah money just for myself. I'm going to invest. I'm going to do a mitzvah with it. It's a really great chinuch, education opportunity to kind of shift the focus from self-absorption, which is, again, it's natural, it's normal, and whatever, but to shift it a little bit away from complete focus on self to focus on the other, selflessness, purpose. What am I here for, as opposed to what do I need? By the way, along those lines, there's a story where this chassid, this disciple of the Alter Rebbe, the author of Tanya, whose text we're reading right now, he comes to his Rebbe, to the Alter Rebbe, and he says he's asking for a blessing for everything that he needs. He needs that his family should be healthy, and that the cows should produce milk this year, and the chicken should lay eggs, and all the animals, everything should be fine and dandy, and money and everything. When he's done with his list, they didn't have cars then, but yeah, I hear you. But at the end of his blessing request list, the Alter Rebbe says to his disciple, he says, I've heard now everything that you need, but have you thought about what you are needed for? And the story goes that the guy fainted. Like he was so like thunderstruck by it. It really struck him deeply. Like, wait a second, I'm thinking about, I'm here standing in front of, my spiritual mentor, and all I'm thinking of is what I need, myself, me, right? As opposed to asking for guidance, asking for insight into, my purpose in life. And that's a completely different shift. So, he's saying here, the idea is to kind of break the suffocating grip of the animal soul on our divine soul inside, that's likened to a fire. The fire is inside, but if it's not catching on, it means that the wood is too thick. So we need to break it open a little bit, and breaking it open means to have an honest assessment of who and what our animal soul is. Now let's continue. He's now harping on the fact that the Beinoni identifies more with the vitalizing soul, oftentimes, than the divine soul. With regard to the divine soul, right, the bottom paragraph on page 3, within him it is said, the soul which you gave within me is pure. The word within me cannot be understood as referring to the body alone. The body cannot speak for itself as a complete man. Thus, it must also refer also to the animating soul. I feel like that, I don't know why I'm reading that, but that's making it more complicated. Basically, it says the soul which you gave within me is pure, which implies that there's me and the soul within me. You with me? Yeah. So if I identified as a soul, I wouldn't say the soul you gave within me is pure. I would say I am pure. If my soul was speaking, it would say I am pure. If my body is speaking, it says the soul you gave within me is pure, which implies that my body and my animal soul are not so pure, but my divine soul is pure. Therefore, the words which you gave within me imply that the man himself who is saying these words is not identified with the pure soul, except in skipping the unbolded words, because that's commentary, except in the case of tzaddikim, which was described before, they always identify with their pure spirit. Within them, next page. Yeah, which next page?
Mhm.
Yep.
Top of the next page.
Top of page 4. Within them, the contrary is true. The man himself is the pure soul. Within tzaddikim, in other words, with tzaddikim, they're the opposite. The man himself is the pure soul, the divine soul, while their body is called the flesh of man, secondary to man, etc. In other words, a tzaddik says, who am I? I'm a soul, a divine soul. I happen to have a body. Yeah, that's my glove, my spacesuit. That's how I operate in this physical world, because a soul you can't hand somebody something without a body. So my soul has a spacesuit, but that's not who I am. I am a soul in a body. Whereas the rest of us, Beinanim and aspiring Beinanim, we are bodies with souls. That's how we view ourselves. Let's continue. It was in this sense that Hillel the elder would say to his disciples when he went to eat, that he was going to do a favor to the lowly and poor creature, meaning his body.
And we all know what he ate. He went and made himself a sandwich.
Right. Oh, very good. Very good. Right. It's taken me a second. Right. Certainly on Passover. So what does it mean? It means that Hillel would say, I'm going to do it. Actually, I don't know, it works better in the Hebrew. Ligmol chesed im haluva vania. I'm doing chesed now. I'm reaching out to someone in need. Who? My body. In other words, he was reaching out to his body, which means who's the he? The soul. He's helping his body, like feeding the spacesuit. Imagine someone says, "Oh, I need to take my car in for maintenance." You're not your car. Your car is your car. Your car is your vehicle that you need to take care of. He viewed his body the same way. I got to take in my car, my body for its daily checkup. What? Breakfast. Like a scream or a drill? Power tools. Okay, good. All right. Just making sure. Right? So it's amazing. Right? He's like, I gotta take in, they call it like a body shop. Right? It's kind of like I gotta take my body into the shop. I gotta have lunch. He regarded his body as a foreign thing. Okay. Again, the language sometimes seems a little extreme. I think it's some of the translation. He regarded his body as a foreign thing and therefore used this expression that he was doing it a favor by giving it food. For he himself was nothing other than divine soul, and he was a tzaddik, right? It alone animated his body and flesh, and as much as in tzaddikim, the evil that was in the vital soul, pervading their blood and flesh, has been transformed into good and completely absorbed into the holiness of the divine soul. We're going to skip that. With the Beinoni, however, right? With the Beinoni, middle of page 4, since the substance and essence of the vitalizing animal soul, stemming from the Sitra, which pervades his blood and flesh, has not been transformed into good, it indeed constitutes the man himself, at least from our consciousness. We believe that we are a body with a soul, as opposed to a soul in a body. That's the way we perceive ourselves. What is the truth? The truth is we are a soul that happens to have a body, right? Happens to be journeying this life with a body, or this stage of life with a body. But we see ourselves as a body with a soul. That's how our perception is. If so, by the way, you think that all this is a bit of a detour. He's like trying to say how you cut down the body, and now he's getting into the difference between the consciousness of a tzaddik and a beinoni. Like, what is going on here? But look, he just brings it back right here. If it's true that he is actually the animal soul, that's his self-identification, he is removed from God with the utmost remoteness. For the lusting drive in his animal soul is capable of lusting also after forbidden things which are contrary to God's will. If I identify myself as an animal soul, who am I? It's like, I have a godly soul. So who am I? I'm an animal soul. Do you know what that means? If I identify as an animal soul, what I'm saying is I am a creature that can do who knows what. That's my self-identification. And while he does not desire to do them, these forbidden things, in actual practice, God forbid, yet they are not truly repulsive to him, as they are to tzaddikim, as explained above. A beinoni is not repulsed by negativity. He may not do it, but is not repulsed by it, can understand it also. You know what? I could see it. Not going to do it today, but I could see that. Let's continue page number 5. In this, and by the way, he's about to give us meditation. This is all a walking meditation to get us to break ourselves open. He's doing it for us. He said, break yourself open, chop the wood, right? Take an axe, chop the wood, splinter the wood. Do that to yourself. How? He's literally walking us through it. In this, he is inferior to and more loathsome and abominable than unclean animals and insects and reptiles, as mentioned above. For even they do not transgress against God's will, and since he does do so in his mind at least, he is worse than they. In other words, this is part of the meditation. 1 second. I identify as an animal soul, which means I identify with my animal instinct. But 1 second, in that case, I'm worse than an animal. Why? Because an animal is only an animal, but I also have a godly soul. If I identify as an animal with a godly soul, then that's worse than an animal because I have the choice to be above an animal, and I'm still choosing to be an animal. Gewalt. If I relate to food and other forms of physical whatever stuff, if I relate to it like an animal relates to it, then not only how am I better than an animal, on the contrary, I'm lower than an animal because an animal, there's no expectation of transcendence. There's no expectation, right, that a lion will practice iskafia, i.e. holding oneself back from indulging in desire, in material desires. There's no expectation that that's going to happen in the animal kingdom. But with the human being, there's no expectation that the lion is not going to kill the animal that's vulnerable. But there is an expectation that we should transcend our animal desires. When we don't, or when we identify with the animal that has the possibility of not transcending itself, well, then we're even lower than an animal. And as it is written, but I am a worm and not a man. In other words, let's read that little paragraph in the middle. As a human being who chooses to lower himself to the level of a worm, I am worse than a worm. For a worm, for it is a worm by creation rather than by choice. If a person, I'm going to use another term that we use today, a person acts like a snake. You ever hear that expression? Act like a snake. They're worse than a snake because a snake has to be a snake. A human didn't have to be a snake. A human who chooses to be a snake is worse than a snake who didn't have a choice in the first place. When a person chooses to act like an animal, it's worse than the animal because the animal didn't have any other option. We had the other option and we still chose to lower ourselves. 100% free choice. Because yes, we have the animal instinct, but we also have a divine soul and we have a nefesh hasiklit, we have an intellectual soul, we have a mind that can arbitrate between the two. And if we choose to relinquish self-control and indulge our material, our animal-based instinct, that's number one, a choice to answer your question. But number two, lower than the animal. The animal didn't have any other option. The animal had to. We had a choice. Right. It's a good way of framing it. I'm going to skip the parentheses.
But this doesn't help me when I'm saying ashrei and I'm just not feeling it.
One second. What he's suggesting is that from time to time, not when we're feeling in a bad mood and then we're piling on ourselves, from time to time to really go through this meditation about the frailties of the human condition, the frailties of the human spirit, the frailties of, not the human spirit, but the frailties of the body and the animal soul and how of my imperfection. And then that will create a desire for self-improvement, a desire to be better. But it also creates a sense of vulnerability. And the ego of the animal soul is being cut down a little, is being crushed a little bit, broken down, so that the light can catch on fire. Let's continue. He continues now with this. He's walking us through the cutting down of self. Especially, we're now the bottom paragraph of page 5. Especially so if he calls to mind the contamination of his soul with the sin of youth, and the blemish he has wrought thereby in the supernal worlds, the source of his soul. The fact that they were sins of youth belong to a time and to a spiritual level from which he may presently be far removed is irrelevant in these supernal worlds where everything is timeless, and it is as if he had caused the blemish and defiled himself this very day, God forbid. So even the mistakes of our youth, a person, no one else is this is not anyone telling you how a bad person you are. This is you reminding yourself of your own imperfection for one purpose, to open yourself up a little bit. True, he may have already repented sincerely. This is top of page number 6, and thereby remove the blemish and cleanse himself. Right, post Yom Kippur, everything's good. But the essence of repentance is in the heart, and in the heart there are many distinctions and levels. Which means that even if you did tshuva on one level, you can still go deeper on a different level. As we grow, tshuva, the idea of repentance and cleansing, is an ongoing process. In other words, the cleaner it gets, the cleaner, I mean, think about anything. You clean your car, and the more you clean it, the more you notice what else needs to be cleaned. Or it's like, oh, even better. It's like, you know that thing where, you change the doormat in your house and the next thing you know, there's a renovation happening, right? You know that joke? It's like, because you change the doormat and then, oh, the paint is looking, because now you have now that looks fancy. So now it's like, oh, maybe we need to repaint. Oh, we're repainting. Let's do this. And then the next thing you know, you've demolished your house, you rebuilt it. That's the thing. So the nicer something gets, the more you notice what's still out of place. Even if that looked fine a day before, now in this new glossy thing, it needs to be fixed. So when we think about our past and the idea of tshuva, even when we've repented for our past, in the past, But as we're a better person today, there's still more work to be done, even vis-a-vis the past. There's still more to clean. That's what he says. V'halev yesh bo bechinot madregot rabot. There are many levels of the heart. If tshuva is something in the heart, well, I mean, the heart's not done. It's not like one level. It's not like on off. The heart has so many different dimensions and levels and passageways. So there's always more to be done. Anyway, moreover, everything depends, again, middle of that paragraph, everything depends on what kind of man he is. The greater his stature, the higher the level of repentance required of him, and on the time and place in which he now stands, as is known to the knowing. I love that. Ki yadua leyodim. As those who know. Like if you know, you know. The point is that there's always more work to be done. Consequently, now he brings it back. He kind of ties it together. Middle of page 6. Consequently, now at this time, when observing himself, and when introspecting, right? When thinking about himself, he sees that the light of the soul does not penetrate into him. It is evident that either A, today his repentance has not been accepted and his sin still separated from godliness, or B, it is desired that he be raised to a more sublime level of repentance, coming from a point yet deeper in his heart than his earlier repentance. So in other words, bottom line, if a person is trying to daven or trying to study, but it's not hitting the heart, so then what's wrong? What's wrong? I'm applying the fire to the wood. What's wrong? Well, he says, there's something holding me back. There's something that I've done wrong or something, a level that I need to climb higher to that I'm still not at yet. And that itself can open us up. That itself can open up the heart. For this reason, skipping the commentary, for this reason, King David said, now we know that King David had a very interesting life on many different levels. King David started off as a shepherd boy, simple shepherd boy who shot to fame when he slingshot Goliath in the famous David v. Goliath cage match, UFC minus 1,024, right? So, all right, thank you.
What does that say?
Thank you. We're taking apart a sukkah.
No. Oh.
Oh, I didn't know. All right. I was guessing, but apparently they're cleaning the area that was a sukkah. So David shot to fame when he took on Goliath, who was taunting the Philistine king, as a word, Plishtim. You can, right? Not at all. And antagonizing the Jewish people and mocking them and challenging, who's going to step up and fight me? And there was one guy, David, that, well, listen, hero, redhead. He was a fiery guy, 100%.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Did this change something?
Yeah, because my family is redheaded.
Ah,
My
there you
father
go.
was redheaded.
So,
Grandfather,
see that?
grandmother, aunts.
Any
all
Davids in
redheaded.
the family?
What?
Any Davids in the family?
No.
All right.
Oh, yeah, Samuel David, my
There-
grandfather.
There you go. Maybe he was the original. Anyway, so David is not a king, he's a shepherd boy. He goes and he kills the mighty Goliath, and then he lives a very complicated life. He's wanted by his own father-in-law. He wants King Shaul wants to kill him because he's afraid of his rise, and so whatever. Eventually, he becomes king, and as king, he has the incident with Bathsheba, where he had a very interesting life. Now, the Talmud says, whoever, the story, but the Talmud says, whoever says that King David sinned is incorrect. Now, how we understand that, there are different ways of understanding what happened with King David, and Bathsheba. Bottom line is, King David himself lived for the rest of his life in tshuva, in repentance. In fact, in his book of Psalms, he writes, V'chatasi negdi samid. And that's what we're reading right now. King David said, my sin is constantly before me. What does that mean? My sin is constantly before me. It means even though I've done tshuva, I've asked for forgiveness, etc. Even though I've done all that, it's still there. I'm constantly working on that. I'm constantly working to heal that, to get better than that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe both. Let's continue. Even he was innocent. Where are we? Next page, page 7. We're moving through this quickly. Even he who is innocent of the grievous sins of youth, but wants to attain a broken spirit, should set his heart to fulfill the counsel of the holy Zohar. Again, we're quoting the Zohar. To be a master of accounts, Mari de Chushbana. Master of accounts means, again, introspection. Look at the books, the internal books, the books of the soul, the books of the heart. This means that he should take stock with his soul of all his thoughts, utterances, and actions that have come and gone. Wow, since the day he came into being and until the present day. Wow, talk about an audit. Talk about a self-audit. Everything you thought about, said, and have done from the moment you were born until today. How much time do we have for this? It seems like it's going to take more than a few days, right? Were they all, and ask yourself the question, were they all of the realm of holiness or of the realm of impurity? God deliver us. He's not, the Alter Rebbe, the author, is not judging anyone, nor is anyone meant to judge anyone else. This is simply the following. If you find yourself stuck, here's what to tell yourself to open yourself up to be less stuck. Ask yourself the question. How perfect am I really? I'm very smug. I'm very happy. I'm very content. How perfect am I? How perfect am I? This latter realm includes any thought, utterance, or action not directed toward God. It's not if it was bad. Anything that was not about God, His will and His service, even when they're not actually sinful. Since this is the meaning of the term, sitra achra, not necessarily evil, but simply the other side. The side that is not holy. Okay, let's continue. Now, it is known, middle of page 7, that whenever a person thinks holy thoughts, he becomes during that time a chariot for the chambers of holiness, whence these thoughts originate. In other words, when we think holy thoughts, our mind becomes a vessel, a vehicle for holy thoughts. Conversely, let's keep on going. Bottom of page 7. Conversely, when he thinks impure thoughts, he becomes an unclean vehicle for the hechalot, the chambers of impurity, from which all impure thoughts originate. So too is speech and action. If our mind is filled with negative thoughts, with impure thoughts, then our mind is literally a vehicle or a chariot. Back in the day, they had chariots, not Teslas, as a chariot for, or actually it doesn't say chariot, it says vehicle, is actually a vehicle.
Burn carbon-based fuel.
Right. They had other emissions, but not those, correct.
Chariot?
Well,
The horse.
chariots were pulled. But yeah, so the idea is that that the mind is a vehicle, likewise speech and action. The mouth, the words are a vehicle for whatever they're carrying. Action, our hands are a vehicle for either good or the opposite. Let him further consider his dreams. Oh my gosh, now we're getting really detailed here. If you still can't find anything wrong, if there's still no flaws, keep on looking. Look to the dreams. Let him further consider his dreams in order to humble his spirit. For one may learn more about himself from his dreams than from his waking conscious thoughts. For the most part, they are vanity and an affliction of the spirit, because his soul does not ascend heavenward during his sleep, since it is written, who shall ascend the mountain of the Lord? Meaning in this context, whose soul shall rise heavenward while he sleeps to see and absorb matters of Torah and holiness, which will in turn be reflected in his dreams. In other words, a simple question. When we dream, are we dreaming of Torah and God, or vanity? And the answer to that question will reflect how high our soul is ascending during sleep. Is our soul ascending to the chambers of holiness to draw from there, or to the chambers of nonsense, which is not an actual chamber? I just created that now, but roughly speaking, the chambers of not holiness, from whence we draw dreams that are just bizarre and meaningless, right? So and then he's just trying to give us fodder to feel bad about things, right? Like, I'm not perfect, right? How's your dream? How's your dream state, right? What are you dreaming about? And the next verse gives the answer. He that has clean hands and a pure heart, implying that the soul of one whose hands and heart are not pure does not ascend. And that's why his dreams are a patchwork of vanity and foolishness. A patchwork of vanity and foolishness. That's not a translation. That's the commentary. Dr. Rebbe didn't write a patchwork of vanity and foolishness, although I love that line. But nonetheless, right, that's why our dreams are all over the place, because the soul is not ascending. Furthermore, those originating from the evil side come and attach themselves to him and inform him in his dreams of mundane affairs, and sometimes mock him and show him false things and torment him in his dreams. Like we call this nightmares, right? Where are nightmares coming from? He says, nightmares are coming from the fact that negative energy, negative spirits are attaching themselves to us when we sleep. Anyway, bottom line is, the longer he reflects on these matters, middle of page 8, the longer he reflects on these matters, from the beginning, he reflecting on the fact that I identify not with my godly soul, but with my animal soul. Reflecting on the fact that I have things that I did when I was younger, let's say. Oh, no, sorry. That weren't so good, that I never really fixed, really, or even if I did, but I could still do it better, tshuva. All the things that I've done throughout my life or said or thought about that weren't exclusively for God. So the longer he reflects on these matters, both in his own thoughts and by delving deeply into books which speak of these matters, in order to break down his heart within him and render himself shamed and despised in his own eyes, as is written in the scriptures, so utterly despised that he despises his very life. Again, this is very extreme in the wording, but it means basically where a person is very unsatisfied with their current status and can't walk around and be like, oh, look at me, I'm so great. So the more that a person does this, the more he despises and degrades thereby the sitra achra, the negative side, casting it down to the ground and humbling it from its haughtiness and pride of self-exaltation, wherewith it exalts itself over the light of the divine soul's holiness, obscuring its radiance. This, the objective of this exercise that we've been describing today in chapter 29 is not to make ourselves feel bad, but to humble the sitra achra within us, to humble the negative force within us, to humble the other side within us, and basically say, it's not the be all and end all. He should also thunder against it. Where are we now? Page 9. He should also thunder against it, the sitra achra, with a strong and raging voice in order to humble it. As our sages state, a person should always rouse the good impulse against the evil impulse. As it is written, rage and sin not. That means that one should rage in his mind against the animal soul, which is his evil impulse, with a voice of stormy indignation, saying to it, as you're telling yourself, this is in your own mind. Indeed, you are truly not about yourself, but about the negative in yourself. Indeed, you are truly evil and wicked, abominable, loathsome, and disgraceful, and so forth, using all the epithets. Epithets? They pronounce that. Epithets? All right. By which our sages have called it. There's use all the adjectives. How long, and tell yourself, tell your inner animal soul, how long will you obscure the light of the blessed Ein Sof, which pervades all the worlds, which was, is, and will be the same, even in the very place where I stand, just as the light of the blessed Ein Sof was alone before the world was created, utterly unchanged. As is written, I, the Lord, have not changed, for he transcends time, and so on. But you, repulsive one, and so forth, deny the truth which is so plainly visible, that all is truly as nothing in his presence, a truth which is so apparent as to be visible to the eye. So that's the narrative. That's how you rage against your inner animal soul that tries to deny the truth of Hashem. In this way, he will help his divine soul, enlightening its eyes to perceive the truth of the unity of the infinite light of the Ein Sof, as though with physical sight and not merely through the lesser perception of hearing and understanding. For as explained elsewhere, this is the core of the whole divine service, which is to see God as it were, not just to perceive God, and not just to understand or believe in God, but to really just to have a perception of God in the space that we're in. And the reason that the humbling of the spirit of the sitra achra is effective in crushing it is that in truth there is no substance whatsoever in the sitra achra. Now here's the final dagger. I don't know if the right word is dagger. He says, in truth, it's not even substantive. That is why it is compared to darkness, which has no substance whatsoever and is automatically banished by the presence of light. Page number 10. We're closing in on this. Similarly with the sitra achra, indeed it possesses abundant vitality with which to animate all the impure animals and the souls of the nations of the world, and also the animal soul of the Jew, and as has been explained. So all negativity in creation, all sorts of mundane negativity, etc. It's all powered by sitra achra. Yet this vitality is not its own. What is sitra achra? It's not its own, God forbid, but stems from the realm of all. It's God that animates everything. Really, what looks like the sitra achra is not really something else. It's really Hashem. It's really God. God Almighty is giving every single element of creation its life. For the realm of holiness is the source of all life, including even the life force of the Sitra has been explained above. Therefore, it is completely nullified in the presence of holiness, as darkness is nullified in the presence of physical light. Its power lies only in the fact that in regard to the holiness of man's divine soul, God has given it, the Sitra Achra, permission and ability to raise itself against it, the divine soul, in order that man should be roused to overpower it and to humble it by means of the humility and submission of his spirit, and by being abhorrent and despised in his own eyes, for through this he humbles the Sitra Achra and abhors it. In other words, God only props it up so that we should take it down. It's like any sort of riddle. You create a riddle in order to be solved. God props up what appears to be this Sitra Achra, this negative, this other side, this other force, when in truth, it's all Hashem. But how do you knock down the house of cards? It's by pulling out the axe and just cutting it down, chipping away at it piece by piece, by saying, I don't take you so seriously. I know what you are. I know that you're a distraction. I know that you're not real. I know, right? The monster's under the bed. I know you're not real. I know you're a distraction. I know you're fake, right? I know you're trying to pull me into a negative place. It's not going to work. I know the truth. And through this, we humble ourselves. The arousal of man below to crush the Sitra Achra causes an arousal above. Fulfill what is written. From there will I bring you down, says God, to the Sitra Achra, which seeks to rise against godliness and to obscure it. Basically, God says, if you put in the effort below, I will finish the job from above and knock down the negative within you. This means that God deprives it, the Sitra Achra, of its dominion and power, and withdraws from it the strength and authority which had been given it to rise up against the light of the holiness of the divine soul. It becomes basically impotent. It loses its strength of being a rival to our divine soul. Thereupon, it automatically becomes nullified and banished, just as darkness is nullified and banished before physical light. All right. I think, you know what, let's continue. We're going to just very quickly. He brings one example of this. Indeed, we find this explicitly stated in the Torah in connection with the spies sent by Moses to scout out the land. At the outset, they declared, for he, the enemy, is stronger than us. At the outset, they declared, for he, the enemy, is stronger than we. And interpreting the word mimenu, the sages say, read not than we, but rather than he, than God, meaning that they had no faith in God's ability to lead them into the Holy Land. But afterwards, they reversed themselves and announced, we will readily go up to conquer the land. So when it came to the spies came back and said, we can't do it. The people, we can't do it. Too strong. Not even God can help us. And then what happened? Then they said they reversed. They said, no, we want to go. What happened in between? They got in trouble. What does that mean? It means they didn't even believe what they had said before. What does it mean? Why is it that when they got raged at by God, then you're not going to go in for 40 years. So they go, no, we'll do it. You know what that means? That means when they said, we're scared, that wasn't real. What was real is the faith in God. What wasn't real is, God, not even God can do it. That wasn't real. That's why when they got a little clap, the house of cards fell down and the truth came out. That's what he says right here. Whence did their faith in God's ability return to them? Our teacher Moses, peace unto him, had not shown them in the interim any sign or miracle concerning this, which would restore their faith. He had merely told them that God was angry with them and had sworn not to allow them to enter the land. What value did this divine anger and oath have to them if they in any case did not believe in God's ability to subdue the 31 kings who reigned in the land at that time, for which reason they had no desire whatsoever to enter the land? Surely then, the explanation is as follows. Israelites themselves are believers, the descendants of believers. Even while they stated the enemy is stronger than he, their divine soul still believed in God. They professed a lack of faith in his ability only because the Sitra Achra clothed in their body and the person of their animal soul had risen against the light of the holiness of the divine soul with its characteristic impudent arrogance and haughtiness without sense or reason. Therefore, as soon as God became angry with them and thundered angrily, how long shall I bear with this evil congregation? Your carcasses shall fall in the wilderness. I, God, have spoken. I will surely do it unto all this evil congregation. The moment that God said, now you're in trouble, their heart was, that's my paraphrase, their heart was humbled and broken within them when they heard these stern words, as is written, and the people mourned greatly. Consequently, the Sitra Achra toppled from its dominion, from its haughtiness and arrogance. But the Israelites themselves had believed in God all along, and others on the inside. We're going to stop here. Oh my gosh, we have 2 paragraphs left. No, we're not going to stop here. Every person in whose mind there occurs doubts concerning faith in God can deduce from this episode of the spies that these doubts are nothing but the empty words of the Sitra Achra. When you're like, oh, I don't know if I believe in God, I don't know what I believe. You believe the Sitra Achra is trying to make you crazy, which raised itself against the divine soul. But Israelites themselves are believers. Furthermore, the Sitra Achra itself entertains no doubts at all concerning faith. In other words, the negative force inside, it also knows the truth. It has merely been granted permission to confuse man with false and deceitful words. It knows in whose employ it works. It's hired by God. The same God that is trying to convince you doesn't exist. That's the Sitra Achra that's driving you crazy about God. Are you sure? Doesn't exist. That same voice is powered by God. The very God that it's trying to convince you doesn't exist. Because its job is to do that. So don't believe it. It's getting a paycheck signed by God. Why would you believe that? It broke the wall down. It broke the facade. I'll give you an example. So we'll just finish it. We'll do a quick. Hold on. We'll do a quick example. It has merely been granted permission to confuse man with false and deceitful words in order that he may be more richly rewarded for mastering it to create free choice. There has to be the inner voice that tries to pull us away, but we're not supposed to listen to that voice and take it seriously. In this, it is similar to the harlot who attempts to seduce the king's son through falsehood and deceit with the king's approval, as in the parable mentioned in the Holy Zohar, and that is how the chapter ends. The Zohar, again, third mention of the Zohar today, the Zohar tells us that the king hires this woman to seduce the prince to test his morals and values, and the king wants and she wants the prince to resist. If the prince gives in to her advances, why'd you do that? That wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to try to convince you, but you were supposed to resist. I don't want to get stuck in that because there's the larger picture is for today the more important thing. I mean, it's all part of it, but here's the big idea. Big idea is that sometimes we find ourselves stuck. We can call it spiritual apathy. We can call it timtum halev. We can call it a obstruction of the heart, whatever you want to call it. But either way, it's caused by the same thing. What it's caused by is an animal soul, klipa, sitra, whatever you want to call it, that is very, it feels good, it feels fine, and it feels, it's very proud of itself. Not proud in the sense of, oh, I know I did good things, I'm proud of myself for the good that I've done. But this is like a pride in the negative stuff, a pride in the mundane stuff. And the more, it's kind of like a seesaw. The more we indulge in the material and the physical stuff, the more sensitive we are to the physical, the less sensitive we are to the spiritual, right? When this goes down, this goes up, like the seesaw. There's an inverse correlation. And so the more spiritually insensitive we are, it means one thing. If we are finding within ourselves that we're not sensitive enough, it's because we're indulging a little too much in the other stuff. So what's the secret? What's the solution? The solution, he says, is if wood doesn't catch on fire, you gotta splinter it. If the body's not catching on fire, you gotta splinter it. You gotta go through these meditations. How good am I really? How smug should I be really? Right? How optimal are my relationships? How, am I crushing this thing called life? Right? In the proper way. Right? Am I where I need to be? Have I always done what I have to have done? Was I always there in my relationships? Was I always there for myself in the proper way? Was I always there for God? Was I always there for my commitments? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves. And when we ask ourselves these questions, if we're honest with ourselves, the answer will be no. And then it's not about making ourselves feel bad. It's about toppling the house of cards. It's like the story that we ended with, the story of the Meraglim, the story of the spies. The spies come back. There's no way we're going to do it. Everyone's crying, oh, God can't even help us. We're doomed. And then God says, you know what? That's it. You're not going in. No. We want to go in. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a strike. So he's suggesting that this shouldn't happen from anyone else. It shouldn't happen because life humbles us. It shouldn't happen that the light of our people comes out when we're attacked. It shouldn't require that. It should require us to break ourselves open a little bit. We should open ourselves up and not need God, life, God forbid, anyone else to hit us metaphorically or literally to open us up. The light we should be a flame. We should be alive. We should be, as the kids say, lit in a good way. Naturally and inherently with our own doing. And if we feel ourselves stuck, it's about humbling ourselves to open ourselves up. I want to make sure one thing. I mean, a few things, but I'm starting with one thing. Please don't misconstrue chapter 29 of Tanya as, well, the Alter Rebbe is saying we're bad people. That is not at all what he's saying. He's saying, if you find yourself stuck, here is something that you can try in yourself to open yourself up. Be honest, be introspective, and see if it works. Is he telling us that we're no good? Nope. But you can think about this for yourself if you need it. A knife is a great tool if you need to cut something open. If you need to, right? If you need to open yourself up, here's a tool that you can use on yourself. I would say don't try this at home, but don't try this on other people, right? No one should try this on you, etc. I think this beats the alternative. I mean, how many times do we not appreciate our relationships until, God forbid, something happens? And then there's a health scare. And suddenly we realize how much we love the other person. What does that mean? We loved them or we didn't love them? And if we love them, why did it take, God forbid, a health scare to remind ourselves that we love them? Because that's what happens in life. Because we get distracted. If we wanted to have another way of framing chapter 29, it's how to stop being distracted. Sometimes you got to wake up. You have to wake up. I have teenagers, a few teenager boys. To wake them up in the morning, sometimes you have to be a little loud. It's like, hey, wake up. Like, works for the little kids. For the big kids, like, hey, Shalom, you asked me to wake you up. Good morning. Right? You need a little bit of a wake-up call. We're talking about wake-up calls here. So we should never need a wake-up call because we should always be awake. But if we need it, it should always come from inside us. We should never need it from outside. And I think that this is healthy for us in our own growth, in our collective unity, and in seeking our purpose in this world. But remember, you and I being stuck, that is not the natural state of things. It's a sitra achra state, a falsely imposed state that is not real. It's not authentic to us. It's not even authentic in the realm of creation itself. The sitra achra, we said, doesn't have its own energy. It only is the energy that God gives it to provide the opposition. So my blessing for all of us. And, the new year was, a few weeks ago. It's already the 25th day of Tishrei. So Rosh Hashanah was 25 days ago. But since Rosh Hashanah, we had the 10 days of repentance. And then we had Yom Kippur. And then we had like 4 days in between. And then we had Sukkot. And then we had Shemini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. So we've had like not in a bad way, but in a good way, a roller coaster of emotions, plethora, right? A cornucopia, as a word. Cornucopia, absolutely. Right? A cornucopia of spiritual delight and inspiration. And each of us in our own way, had moments in which we felt inspired and connected, and I'm sure of it. But here's the message. I think this is the first day that it's kind of like, now we're back to real life. It's because, this week we don't have a 3-day holiday coming up, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. No, I know, right. Well, we can make one, but that's actually my point. There's no holidays on the calendar now for a while. For a while. That's like, we got almost 2 months now. Right, Hanukkah is the 25th day of Kislev. That's 2 months from today.
So when's the next potpourri?
So here's the thing. It's not going to come from outside now. Now it needs to come from the inside. Now we need to do the work. It's almost like we've been lifted up, and now it's like, okay, we're not going to stay on that high, but it's about keeping ourselves inspired. I mean, we could try to stay on the high, but it's probably not going to stay on that level of Sukkot, of Simchat Torah. There's 1 day a year that we have that energy. But the bottom line is, this is the first. In Chabad tradition, on this day we say V'Yakov halach l'darko. After all the excitement, Jacob then went on his way, and we're all the Jacob. Like the English of that is hit the road, Jack. Right? Hit the road, Jack. It's time. Now we're walking back into regular day to day. And, we can get stuck. And I think today the message is, yes, we can get stuck, but we can also unstuck ourselves. So no, this is not necessarily Drano for the soul. It's not as easy as pouring the liquid down and flushing it down with hot water. This is takes a little bit more work and more effort. But there is a way to unclog ourselves, to make ourselves more sensitive, more open to God, self, to others. And it comes with a little introspection. It's good to be honest with ourselves. Before Freud, before the modern psychology movement, there was the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe said, look inside and don't be afraid to have a fearless accounting of self inside and to be honest with yourself and to feel what's not right and to use that not as a way to make yourself feel bad. On the contrary, to make yourself feel alive and open. May all of our opening happen from within, should never come from without. May we be on fire, alive and vibrant. Thank you for joining me this morning. Shavua Tov, and lots of blessings. 2 quick announcements. Number 1, next Wednesday, we are starting this brand new course called Nurturing Relationships. Wednesday, November 6th. This is a must join. This is a 6-week exploration, how to improve all of our relationships, whether it's family, friends, community. The lessons are phenomenal. The lessons are the art of empathy, the art of listening, the art of disagreeing, the art of positivity, the art of influence, and the art of forgiveness. 6 lessons to improve all of our relationships starting Wednesday, November 6th. Again, this is not optional. It's mandatory. Okay. This is, but I mean,
Will there be homework?
I can give homework if you want. No, there's no homework. Good. I also want to highlight this. Oh my gosh, I didn't notice how cool this guy is. Who's this guy? Look how cool that guy is, the silhouette fellow. No, isn't that nice?
Abraham, right?
Could be Rashi. So we are starting this Tuesday night a brand new year of Torah study with one focus, Rashi. 7:30 Tuesdays. So we have Wednesday starting a week from this Wednesday, not this Wednesday.
You don't have to worry with interfering with Mincha Myra too at that time.
Correct. 7:30 p.m. after the prayers, 7:30 p.m. Here's how it's going to work. I'm going to lay it out. Every week, we're going to take a verse. We're going to take a Rashi. We're going to ask questions on the Rashi, break it down, that eviscerate the Rashi. Be like, Rashi doesn't even make sense. Who is this guy? And why do we like him? And then we'll be like, and then we'll reconstruct it and present a magnificent and brilliant new Rashi interpretation each week. If you enjoy David Copperfield, David Blaine, or any other magician, you will love our new Rashi Torah study series in which we perform magic each week, the magic of discovery of Rashi. So that's that. Those are the 2 things that I want to mention. Tuesday night, 7:30, starting this week, right over there in that room, right over there, with snacks, Daily show.
What's next?
I don't know. We'll find snacks. Maybe we'll do cookies. Yeah, we'll do snacks. 7:30, also on Zoom, 7:30 p.m. Wednesday. If you haven't yet signed up, please sign up. Nurturing Relationships. Sorry? 6th of November, not this Wednesday. Yeah, if you show up this Wednesday, you might have to teach the class yourself, whoever shows up, because I won't be there. Wednesday, by the way, I should clarify. Wednesday is both afternoon and evening, so you can join. And all the information about all the above is on our website. Yes.
What about a push for Monday?
Mondays also. Oh, hold on. Too many things now. 12 o'clock. I teach it twice. Yes, I teach it. We'll see you, Shavua Tov. I teach it 12 noon, 12 to 1:15, or 7:30 to 9. Mix and match, in-person Zoom. But in person, you get bagels. You get lunch on Wednesday. And there's an optional dinner option. Hence the name option, for the optional option. And that's going on Wednesday. All right. So many things to talk about. So many things to learn. We're hitting the ground running. We have I personally have 6 different, between now and Tuesday, I have 6 different things going on. 6 different classes. Not yet, one at a time. Can't do that.
About time started.
Tomorrow 11:30, we have Taste and Torah Club. Everyone should join that. 55 and over. We have a huge crowd every week. Incredible lunch. Oh, I remember the thing. Remember the menu. Did we speak about menu?
Yeah, what's the menu?
Menu is going to be eggplant parm, lasagna, hot food tomorrow. We have a hot buffet, lasagna, eggplant parm, maybe even some cheese raviolis,
And salad.
salad and soup, hot soup, all tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Yes, yes,
Is it gonna be what?
served hot. So you're gonna say it once was hot. No, it should be hot still.
I have a question.
Yes. Which books? Which ones? For this? But I don't know what I'm touching. Okay, so this one. So first of all, when you sign up for on our website, you can choose the book option, and then I'll send the book to your house. Or you can show up Tuesday night, and I will have these books available that you can purchase right there. So I ordered a few extra books. Some people order, I sent to them. But if you didn't order and whatever, then I'll have them. If you want to pick one up, you can grab it then Tuesday night. So that's this. With this course, same deal. You sign up. If you sign up, you get a book.
Yeah.
And for those that are doing Zoom, the Zoom option, I send it to the house. For those in person, I have them here and you pick it up.
If you sign up, do you autograph our copy of the book?
I will sign my name, Rashi. Right, I will sign my name.
Digital signature.
I will e-sign it. How does that sound? As one does. Yeah. Hold on one second. Let me sign out and then we'll schmooze. Dr. Maxey, it's great to see you. Welcome back. Great to see you. Jacqueline, good to see you. Ellen, good to see you. Deborah, good to
Hi,
see you.
Rabbi. Thank you.
Deborah, are you still in Michigan?
I'm in Michigan. I'm leaving Tuesday or Wednesday.
Oh, wow. Back to Florida?
Yeah, and I'll be on the road, but I'll try to pick up that relationship
good.
class en route.
Okay, very good. Yes. So the relationship one starts, the
Week.
Rashi one starts Tuesday, the relationship starts next Wednesday. So hopefully that'll be good for your schedule.
Yeah, I'll be on the
Be part
road
of
for a
that.
while.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, got it. Okay, good. Roy, good to see you. And Nate, Natan, good to see you. All right, everybody, Shavua Tov, and we'll see you a lot soon because we got a lot of stuff. All right, take care.